Good evening. I think we're ready to get started. Hi, I'm Scott Klinker. I head the 3D design program, and thank you all for coming. It's great to see such a great turnout. So thank you for coming. It needs to be closer? Oh, okay. Okay. So thank you for coming. So tonight we have a very special event, the annual Knoll Lecture in Design. And before I introduce our guest, I'm going to just give a little bit of context for the event around Knoll. So the Knoll Lecture in Design was established in 2004 to present a prominent designer or design thinker at the Academy through a public lecture and a visit with the students in the 3D design department. Knoll is recognized internationally as a manufacturer of workplace furnishings and a leader in sustainable design. Knoll is the recipient of the 2011 National Design Award for Corporate Achievement from the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum. Knoll has its roots at Cranbrook. Florence Knoll, co-founder of the company with her husband Hans Knoll, studied at both Kingswood School and Cranbrook Academy of Art. An impressive list of Cranbrook designers have worked with Knoll over the years, including Eero Saarinen, Harry Bertoya, Ralph Rapson, Marianne Strungell, Michael McCoy, Hani Rashid, and most recently, Masamichi Utagawa of Antenna Design, a 1991 Academy graduate. So on behalf of the Academy, I want to thank Knoll for keeping a strong connection with Cranbrook and providing this opportunity to bring top designers here to give a public talk and speak with our students. So before I introduce our speaker, why don't we thank Knoll for their support. One of my personal favorite aspects of the annual Knoll Lecture is that it gives me a chance to invite the designers and thinkers behind the contemporary work that I admire the most. Tonight, we are honored to host design entrepreneur John Edelman in a conversation format to discuss the business and culture of design. Design inherently operates at the intersection of many disciplines: art, engineering, business, anthropology, science. As part of a great art school, we're very familiar with the artistic and cultural lens on design. But tonight, we have a chance to gain new insights on the ways that business intersects with design culture. How does industry support, promote, and realize the vision of designers? And how do designers support the many needs of industry? What design decisions lead to commercially successful products that also have enduring cultural value? We'll ask these questions here at Cranbrook, which could be described as the birthplace of some of the most iconic, modern, and enduring furniture designs of the past century. John has a long legacy in the world of design, currently serving as the CEO and president of Heller, which he purchased in 2022. He also currently serves as the executive chairman of Crypton Fabrics and sits on the board of directors of Chilowich. He launched his career at Edelman Leather, where he spent 14 years, including 6 as president and CEO. Along with a longtime friend and collaborator, John McPhee, he transformed the company into a global trademark by expanding into the luxury lifestyle categories of private aviation, hospitality, and corporate and residential interiors. In 2007, Edelman Leather was sold to Knoll, our sponsor tonight. In 2010, Edelman purchased Design Within Reach with McPhee and revitalized the company through retraining, improved industry relationships, and adding trade and contract divisions and expanding the product development sector. In 2014, the company was purchased by Herman Miller Consumer Group, and Edelman stayed on as Chief Executive Officer for both companies until 2019. Edelman has served on the board of trustees of Design Industries Foundation Fighting AIDS, the board of Design Leadership Network, and the Be Original America's board of directors, and most recently, the board of the New York School of Interior Design. John's been generous enough to take time away from his busy company to visit us here in Michigan, and hopefully he's not too talked out from because he's already spent several hours in the studio today reviewing student work. So, so before we get into it, please welcome John Edelman. How you doing?
A little embarrassed with the intro, but I feel good. I had a great day with the kids, and they're the young people. They're amazing. Like, I love the projects. I love the passion. It's gonna be the best part of the trip.
Great. Thanks again for coming and joining us. This is a special event. So we're going to do a conversation format and get to know John and learn a little bit more about his ideas about the intersection of business and design. So I thought we could start with just learning a little bit more about your background, and that could be your family background or training, the formative years of John Edelman.
I'll start now, and then you can leave in an hour. Just quickly, I was born into a family of collectors and design people. My parents, I'm the youngest of 6 children, so my parents were older. They grew up with the rest of the family in the West Village of New York and had an amazing exposure to like the artists of the time. When they took over my grandfather's leather business, they hired a young designer to help them with the trade shows. And some magazine had mentioned them. They should meet this young guy and use him. And they met this guy. He didn't talk very much. He had straight white hair. And it was Andy Warhol. And he did all the graphic design for like 6 years. And it was a complete unknown. But I always think of my parents as like the Forrest Gumps of that time. They just kind of ended up in these amazing places. I started off after Manhattanville College. We have alum here today. I went to Manhattanville College with no clue about life or what I wanted to do. And my oldest brother had been in the shoe business. A lot of you know Sam Edelman Shoes. And the original company was called Sam and Libby. And the day I graduated from college, I started to work for my brother. He'd always said, I want you to be with me. I want you to work with me. And so I graduated from Manhattanville on Saturday. I flew to Brazil Sunday. And I started in the shoe business. And I'll make it quick, but like what I loved about that time was I was a horrendous student. All right, I went to Manhattanville as a favor to the admissions director. Hannah, you should know that. And I didn't do well. I failed French, multiple times. I didn't have a passion for design. I like selling things. I love that. But I didn't have a direction. And the day I arrived in Brazil, everything changed. And I learned that I learned differently than other people. I learned through experience. I failed French I promise you 3 times. I learned Portuguese conversationally in 6 weeks by ear. And that was like an uplifting moment. You feel much more powerful, much more able to do things. After a little bit in the shoe business, I did very well. I took over the private label division. I met my wife, who's here tonight in the back row. And she said, your parents have this beautiful little leather company. And you don't own the shoe business. You don't love the shoe business. And why don't you join your family business? And my father had been asking me every day for years to come back to the family business, where I threw hides every summer and sorted the product. And I went back. And it was like this amazing moment to go back into the design industry because I hadn't been in it. And I learned about the business through a different industry. So I think I brought value back to the family business. I didn't know the interior design world. So we had a family friend, and when Bonnie and I were dating, went to the 26th Street flea market in Manhattan every weekend and learned modern. I knew more about modern and the designs of Eames and Sarin than the people at Miller and Knoll did when I finally ended up working with them. There's no better university for the details than the flea market. You know, you have to know where to look for the logos, how many wheels on the chairs, everything. And it was amazing. So we went finally to be the first leather ever graded in to Herman Miller product. I knew the product. I knew how to do it. And we were the only people that have ever done it since. We sold Edelman leather to Knoll. They expressed interest. We did an entire process, so I learned how to sell a company. I had hair before that. It is the most difficult thing you'll ever do, to grow something and then sell it. It's arduous, and you make the biggest decision of your life in a very short period of time. And we did it. And Knoll became the caretaker of the Edelman brand. I had promised my wife, who's here, I'd take 6 months off and pay more attention in the family and help her with her photography business and just be a better person all around. But the opportunity came up to buy Design Within Reach. A friend of a friend had overinvested in the company. The company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and they needed help to not die immediately. So rather than taking 6 months off, I took 6 days off. The New York Times article came out January 4th, 2010 on our first day, and I started commuting to San Francisco from Connecticut. So great thing for a family. But that was like the grand stage. And Design Within Reach is today and was then the world leader in authentic modern design, and the only place that told the story of the designers and celebrated design on its own. The catalog, the way the stores were merchandised, everything about it. But it was a nightmare. It was $100 million, losing $25 million a year. The last 35 stores they opened were disasters and too small. And we had a few months to fix it. I did not want to go Chapter 11. My business partner and I, John McPhee, we had a chart of the 72 stores on a wall in order of which ones made money, which ones lost money. And we closed the bad stores in a year. We closed 35 stores in a year with 10-year leases, which meant we had to negotiate with each landlord, and the whole deal was a nightmare. We did it. All vendors had stopped selling Design Within Reach because they were doing copies. They copied Heller. I'll tell that story later. And I had to go to Europe to Salone di Mobile in Milan, and I had 40 set appointments in 4.5 days to tell what our vision was for the company and entice them to come back and sell us again. But not only that, give us 60 to 90-day terms we could pay them. And 100% of them said yes. We brought in designers from around the world to design for us, to launch our own products so we could actually make money. And in 5 years, the company went from 100, I'm rounding the numbers, to $250 million with half as many stores and returned to profitability. And we sold the company to Herman Miller. Stayed with Herman Miller for 5 years, where we ran Herman Miller retail.com and Design Within Reach, and then eventually sold the business, the balance of the business, back to Miller after that. So that's just a quick recap.
Can we back up a second? I was hoping we could cover like some of the nuts and bolts of the furniture industry. So what does Design Within Reach mean, and why did it need to exist? And this is, partly has to do with how the furniture industry is unique, that there's a kind of there's a separate consumer side and a contract side. So could you just tell us a little bit about that structure?
Yeah, the name is misleading. And I used to get tons of pushback on the name, Design Within Reach. And the response was always, not within my reach. And I get it, and I decided not to change the name of the company. I thought there was brand equity in the name of the company. What it meant was, when Rob Forbes founded the company, and you wanted to buy a Sarin table or a Corbusier whatever, or a Eames Lounge and Ottoman, the average consumer couldn't buy it. It was only available through interior designers and went through dealers and the whole network. And his concept was, let's change that and make great design within reach where you could actually buy it. And it served an amazing purpose. People fell back in love with modern because they could get it. If you think about how these companies treated modern for years, you'd really, if you knew the story, you'd be shocked. Herman Miller gave the rights to Eames and all the other classics to Vitra in Europe at no charge. Knoll gave the outdoor collection, I'm blanking, Richard Schultz, back to Richard Schultz for no charge when he left the company when he got fired. They did not value these products because they weren't in the consumer's hands, kind of being in the hot places. So Design Within Reach kind of exploded that. It also exploded the launch of the Aeron chair and the dot-com boom. So it served a purpose. It serves a purpose. So I think that's evolved. I think the current purpose is to tell the stories of the iconic classics and try to always create the next generation of iconic classics. And that's what I really worked on. That was my passion within that business.
And so what role does it serve for Miller Knoll now? It's basically the consumer side of Miller Knoll?
So let's go back to Cranbrook, when Charles and Ray Eames won the chair of the future contest at the MoMA, while they were students, I guess. And when they won the contest at the MoMA, the interesting thing was the prize was we're going to get the chair sold and made. And Bloomingdale's had offered to sell the chair, and Herman Miller offered to make the chair. And if you think about it, Herman Miller didn't have their own way to sell the chair, right? They had to go to a Bloomingdale's. They never had a way to foster great design and then distribute it to the consumer. So Design Within Reach, provided that and made it happen for them.
Okay, so but today, Design Within Reach is mostly the consumer side of Herman Miller.
Yes, the totally consumer side, yes. Yeah. They're face to the average person.
And so a number of other big furniture manufacturers in the contract world, say Steelcase or Hayworth, they don't necessarily have that retail.
They don't have it, but they don't really cater to the consumer.
Okay.
They've stayed in the office interiors section. Systems, soundproof phone booths, all the stuff you see in an office. Yeah. Herman Miller got the big jump on the modern office because everyone wants to work in an office that looks like a cool house. So they leveraged Design Within Reach old collection to fill that need. But Steelcase, Hayworth has a couple cool brands, and they bought a retail company, so they're starting in that land, but it's a higher price point, a little different.
Okay. Yeah, I remember in the 90s, that was really my first experience of DWR, and they seemed to be pretty instrumental in bringing access to all these classics, like especially Eames. Like it seemed like there was this huge Eames revival in the 90s, but it seemed like DWR was, at least in the States, was a big part of that.
Well, they caused it because you couldn't buy it otherwise.
Yeah.
But my mission was, which I thought was more fun even, was always tell that story, always promote the modern classics, but bring designers within reach. Whether it was Egg Collective out of Brooklyn that were doing $20,000 credenzas that no one could touch, or Bossum Fellows with their $6,000 tractor stool. How do we reinterpret those designs with those designers and bring them to a much larger audience? And it worked. We did a lot of that.
So your time at DWR is described as a turnaround story. Can you tell us about the turnaround? And it seemed like it's primarily focused on authentic design. So can you tell us how
I wish
that
the
went?
turnaround was only authentic design. It was a huge part. So I'm sure it's not here. But if you Google John Edelman, Design Within Reach, the first article that comes up is from 2010 with the New York Times doing an article about us coming in to take over the company. They had sent a photographer to Westport, Connecticut, near where I lived, to photograph me in the store. They did this beautiful interview, very nice. And when it comes out, I'm expecting "Hero Comes to Save Company." And instead, the title was, "Is There a Solution Within Reach?" And rather than a big picture of the hero, it was a large picture of Alan Heller suing the company and suing all the buyers for copying his product line. So number one, to your point, get all copies out. Never allow copies in. It's one rotten apple kills the barrel. It's against the rules. So I went and met with Alan. I apologized for my predecessors. We got everything out of the stores. We moved on. What turned it around, I'll just go quickly. They hadn't updated the website in 7 versions. They had stopped making the catalog. They had dramatically overexpanded the store footprint with too many locations. They lost all their vendors. They weren't paying bills. They copied things. They did everything wrong. If you took a standardized test and just randomly filled in checkpoints for the answers, you're going to get some right. I was lucky enough to follow a CEO that got 0 right. So, and I'm not trying to, it makes me seem dumber, right? So it's fine. I just did everything the opposite of what I did before. And, and thank goodness it worked. But if we had no idea what a mess it was. And then 6 months in, we told them, and sorry guys, by the way, all you employees, we're moving the company to Connecticut from San Francisco. And probably one of my most proud moments in the entire industry is when 50% of the employees moved with us. Moved across the country. We didn't have any money. We made them a deal. Most of your furniture is from Design Within Reach. It's valuable, sell it. And then we'll give you a huge discount when you get 80% off when you come back to buy new furniture. So we couldn't afford to move their furniture. But that says so much about Design Within Reach. It had a passionate, devoted crew. They loved design. They loved modern. They loved telling the stories of designers. And they believed that it was something bigger than the people that ran it, that it had a life of its own. And I think that's what Herman Miller saw. When they bought it, it had its own devotees and vibe and catalog and education and all that kind of stuff. And that is still extremely strong today.
So now you're on the other side of that equation with owning Heller. And I was wondering if you could talk about some of the challenges with IP in industry in general, but maybe specifically in the furniture industry.
Yeah, well, IP is a nightmare, and it's very hard to enforce. But I'll start
intellectual property. We're talking about
intellectual property. I'll start off just a minute before that. So we went to buy Heller. Alan had passed away. He was a dear friend who suffered from a long illness. And we were working with Alan's widow, Barbara. And as we're going through the due diligence to buy this tiny company that never had an employee besides the receptionist, we learned that all of the license agreements with the designers had expired. So just so you know, there was nothing to buy. This amazing logo, we had the logo up before, but the amazing Vignelli logo, the same as Knoll. So I had to travel around just after COVID and convince people to give me the rights back to Heller that I would actually pay the bills. Another similar Design Within Reach story. And I'll just tell you quickly, the best visit by far was Frank Gehry. So I go to visit, I said, oh, let's do it Zoom. Everybody's doing Zoom. It's COVID. No, Frank doesn't do Zoom. Okay, that's cool. You should come and see us. Okay, I said, can I be there Tuesday? Right, it's Thursday. No problem. I fly out. They don't prep Frank at all what the meeting is about. He's 92 years old. He's never heard of Design Within Reach, doesn't know who I am. And he's mean to me for, he's mean to me for 30 minutes. And I think that's kind of cool to have Frank Gehry be in a room and be mean to you. I would be happy just with that. And then I told him the vision, I told him the background, and he warmed up and he became a really, really lovely man. He said yes to the deal. And then he took me on a 35-minute tour of his studio to show me all the scale models of the buildings. Literally lifted the roofs off the buildings, showed me the acoustics. He's obsessed with acoustics. And I'll tell that story to my grandkids. It was one of the greatest days ever. So we got all the rights to the product. How do you register them? We're launching right now. We have the classic Bellini chair, which was up on there before. Designed by Mario Bellini. We own every aspect of the chair, the name, the likeness, fine. So now we're launching the new version. We're going to do a bar and a counter stool. It may sound boring to you, but it's monumental to us. Now, bar and counter Bellini after 40 years. And, we're a tiny company. I have 7 employees. We've launched a ton of product in a short period of time, and we have no cash. So to do this, to do it right internationally, it's $20,000 per chair. So that's one of the issues with intellectual property is you have to have some money to protect yourself. But it's really important. The thing I learned recently is if you show the product, this clock starts to tick on registering it. If you wait something like 6 months, you almost can't register the look of it. So you have to act quickly, you have to act intelligently, and it's probably a better place to spend the money than almost anything else. I mean, if we're good and people actually like the product that we spent a fortune on, they'll copy it. So you have to do something to protect yourself. And then it's like whack-a-mole to find the people copying you, but we do our best.
Yeah, that's one thing I've observed over time, that having a patent doesn't mean much unless you have the lawyers to back it up, you know, and which is can work great for bigger companies, but for smaller companies or even for a single designer, it's really hard.
So I'm on the board of Be Original Americas. We fight for authenticity in design. We were a founding member when they started. And yeah, it's brutal. To have to sue somebody that's breaking the law, like it just doesn't seem fair. It's not like that in Europe. It's a little different here. A cease and desist letter goes really far. And now with ChatGPT, you get a pretty good letter. First, you have to fire a warning shot. And we found cease and desist work really well. Like they probably work 65% of the time, right? Half the people copying you don't know they're doing something wrong. You know, they don't feel they'll lose business if they usually all I can get is change the name.
So you're saying maybe you don't need a lawyer that often?
Not that often. I mean, we can't afford them, right? So we do our best.
AI does the job.
AI does the job. I have one form letter we use. All the rental companies that rent Bellini chairs that aren't Bellini chairs, I try to hit them up.
So in your story, we're up to the point where you've acquired Heller, and I've heard you describe Heller as your dream company, and was hoping that you could tell us why.
Yeah, so I told you the trajectory from college to shoes to leather to design within reach, and there was literally almost no time off in between those opportunities. And post-Design Within Reach, I had kind of a forced vacation. I had about 18 months of non-compete. And it was the first time in my adult life that I was able to just think and plan what I wanted to do. And I'd always loved Heller. I love the simplicity of what he did. We make rotationally molded and injected furniture. Now, I've made leather. I made leather, a lot of leather. And if it's a cold winter, the cows, the bulls, rub against the stall too much and hurt the hide. If it's a hot summer, there are too many ticks, there's holes in the hide. If they fold it improperly in shipment, you can't get the crease out forever. And there's only so many beautiful cowhides in the world because we're a byproduct of meat, right? They're not raised. So that was really hard. Awesome, grew it, excellent. Design Within Reach, I was a retailer. There is no, I mean, I'm sure there are, but being a retailer is a tough life. It's 7 days a week, 900 employees, every problem you could ever imagine, shipping furniture from all over the world. Try shipping a Saarinen 72-inch marble-top table up a 3-floor walk-up, in San Francisco, or sending to northern Michigan someone's lake house, a 9-piece sectional sofa for getting a piece. There were parts of that I didn't like. What did I love about Design Within Reach? I love working with designers. I loved it. I loved working with the design community then to explain the product. And I loved, making things that people would keep forever. Heirloom quality furniture that keep forever. I didn't like cushions. I didn't like upholstery. I didn't like fabric. All those things I thought were a pain in the neck. And Heller is pure design. I mean, for me, and it's modern. What is modern? I was able to have my own definition of modern. Modern is aesthetically beautiful, designed for a purpose, no ego in the design, and it can go anywhere. And that was Heller. That's hard. That's really hard. When I say go anywhere, I mean a penthouse or a barn, a schoolyard or a museum. I mean, we're surrounded by that here, but it's not common. And with the design process at Heller, you start off with an idea, a brief. You match it to a designer that hopefully you love working with. And then it's all done on the computer. Everything is structured, you can see it, and then you print one. You print a baby one. Oh, I like that, that's cute, it's like a Vitra miniature, super cool. And then you print it full size. And that's the interesting part. You can tell the fit and scale in real time. You sit in it. And then you carve it and you sculpt it and you scan it and you print it again. And then you take it home and watch a movie. And if it's not comfortable for a movie, don't do it. Go back and fix it again. And then once that's done, once all the sculpting, all the scanning, all the printing, all the testing is done, you build it into a mold. And the product is going to be the same every single time. Like every single time. Alan loved these industrial facilities that make the rotationally molded product. They're massive. The one we use in Wisconsin is like, you can see like the turn of the earth, the rotation of the earth inside of it is so big. And 1 minute, these massive machines are making highway barriers. The next minute, they're injecting the center console of a pontoon boat. And then they make something beautiful. And Alan thought that was just unbelievable. That these idiot machines that could make anything, we could leverage their skills to make something great and make it every single time. So it fit all my criteria for a business, right? It was pure modern, in my definition. It was working with designers. It was doing presentations to design companies to buy it and bringing beautiful product to the consumer. It was, honestly, it was, my wife can tell you, I've been dreaming about it for years until we got the company.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other companies that are kind of where the brand is defined by the material and process. Well, with plastic, Cartel comes to mind. Any others that you think are some of your main competitors?
I have a really strange view about competitors. And I've kind of felt that way my whole life. Like there's other people that do what I've done and do what I do, but I never really see them fully as competitors. Okay. We are so focused on our aesthetic, being modern, being timeless. We kind of breathe our own air. There are European companies that do interesting things. I find a lot of them contemporary versus modern. Temporary. I always say contemporary is temporary, modern is forever. So the vibe is just a little different. We're USA made, which I love, which is, I don't know, I think it's a cool aspect, bring great design back to America. I don't think we have to go to Cartel, make it in some weird factory, ship it across the country, not have the proper stock, blow smoke in the ocean, whatever. I think we have a clean formula. So I couldn't name like direct competitors, which is probably a flaw of mine, but I don't worry about it.
I heard you, in describing modern, you mentioned the idea of no ego. And I'm curious about that because I've never met a really good designer who didn't have a actually huge ego. So
yeah. That's a great reaction. That's what I get a lot. So I think everything about a designer is their brand. So they have amazingly strong egos, which I didn't say they can't have egos, right? They do have egos. They're bigger than life. They make movies of themselves. Philip Stark walks down the street with like masks and 50 motorcycles follow him, revving their engines. And all these guys have special suits and this and that and crazy. That's all fine. But don't put it in the product. There is no ego on the Saarinen table. There is no ego in a lounge chair wood, LCW from Charles and Ray Eames. There is no ego on the Bellini chair, the Limbo, the Bluff, nothing. They're void of extra, void of accoutrement. If you design something highly, highly functional, the chances are it'll be beautiful. Then once you start to put your own stamp on it, let's put a bow on it, let's put flowers on it, let's do this. It's not my thing. That's ego. Have as much ego as you want, personally, but then design clean.
Okay. So we mentioned earlier these different markets for furniture, contract versus consumer. Where does Heller fit in those?
It's the same kind of question as who's my competition?
Yeah.
Modern goes everywhere. So our Vignelli, what's up there? That chair can go anywhere, but the benches that they were showing before, we sell them for pickleball courts. Tesla uses them in the lobby, museum seating, playgrounds, residential, poolside, penthouse, I would say outhouse, but I hope they don't use it there. But since it can go anywhere, it's corporate, it's hospitality, it's residential, it can be anywhere. And then you leverage in indoor, outdoor. I mean, I sound like a sales pitch, but it's what I believe. Modern can go anywhere. You can take the Eames Lounge in Ottoman and put it in almost any environment, corporate or residential. And that's where they started. The Eames Aluminum Group, I mean, it's one of the classic conference chairs in the world, but also I have one in my house. Our dining chairs are the Serenade Executives in leather, right? That's a corporate chair. It's not meant for that. But great design transcends location and becomes good, usable everywhere.
So I was thinking about the different roles that you play at Heller. So you're the owner. So there's only 7 people that work for Heller, right? So, but you're the owner, CEO, and essentially the creative director. Is that fair to say?
100%. That's the part I love about the job. Everything else has to be done, but working with the designers and creating the product, that's the exciting part. I always tell everybody I'm so lucky that I have no ability to design. It's not my thing. I can't do it. I can do a lot of other things. So I never compete with the designer. And I worship them to a certain extent. I torture them, but I worship them. And I love working together with the designer. And I describe it as if you're going bowling. And when you throw the ball has to get from your hand to the pins. Right? And that's my job. I get the designer to throw the ball and get it to the pins. I can't go in the gutter, can't go here. We have to kind of stay and get what we want. But then you get a strike. I'm trying to think, a home run. You get a strike. As creative director at Design Within Reach, I wasn't that title, but nothing was allowed in unless I saw it and approved it, ever. I had final say on every product development project. And that's, if you do business from a design perspective, you'll do well, right? 'Cause at the end of the day, it's product. I can be the best guy, with finance. I could be #1 in marketing. I can do all these other things incredibly well. But if the product isn't excellent, you will not have longevity of a business. You have a short-term pop, but you won't be forever. So I wouldn't know how to run a business without being the creative director in many words.
Yeah. So the title of tonight's event was the culture and business of design, and we might say that the creative director is sort of the cultural component, and CEO would be the business side. Where do those roles? Is there any tension between those roles, or do they come in conflict?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that you're asking me if I'm in conflict with myself. Which we talked about, yeah. Which is, yes. I know exactly what products to do for Heller, what it needs. I could build out about 20 more pieces that are needed to round out our collection and be a mature, thriving business. It's expensive. I just don't have the money. I'm overspending all the time. As you mentioned, we're 7 people. And I know what to do, and I can't. I just can't do it. What chair's up there? When you go, there's a chair called the Bluff chair that we just launched. I know Bluff needs a 2-seater, a side table, and the coffee. This is the Bluff chair. It's perfect, right? I love it so much I can't tell you. Thank you. I think it's perfect. But I know it needs a 2-seater. I know it needs the coffee table, the side table. I know what a collection means. The limbo, this has to turn into a chaise, right? Where the back of it's just going to hug you when you go back. I know how good that's going to be. We're doing the Bellini Bar Encounter, and I have a bunch of briefs that need to get executed. We also have an entire accessories division called Hellerware with plates and mugs. We're bringing back the Philippe Starck toilet brush, the Excalibur, where Sergio Asti ice bucket, all these different things. I know how to do it, but I have no patience. I can't sleep at night, like sitting on all this product and the ideas. But we're going to, because I'm the CEO, and I had to hold myself back.
So I think of that combination of creative director and CEO and other companies that operate under that model, and most of them are European. I think of Alberto Alessi at Alessi or Giulio Cappellini, but not too many American companies come to mind. What do you think?
I mean, Amoco, great company.
Yeah.
I think even Ford's new CEO is a car guy, right? Comes from the car side. But there's very few. The Italians were all about, let's make something beautiful and maybe getting rich is second, or even surviving. And I think the American ideal of let's get rich holds that back. So even a lot of companies that have made fantastic product just weren't really into product, right? They developed a new platform or this or that and got a hit. But, I don't know, I was raised in pure product family. And to do it that way. The Europeans did a better job, and I worry about the European companies now as, these hedge funds and such have kind of bundled them together. And the vibe's going to change. But what I tell everybody is this is a great time for all the young people to start little businesses because they will start to lose their soul, and you will bring the next generation of soul, which I think is important.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because, I think of the history I think of Italian design, especially. There's a lot of companies in that model of you have an owner, creative person who's really passionate about design. They're willing to take some risks, do some edgy design, and they're mostly family owned. So it's not designed by committee, and I think. That combination has helped Italian design, especially, to make some of the most unique products in the past 100 years, but specifically like from the since the 60s until now, and so I think of Heller as being in that model, or even. When Alan was building the company, I feel like he was pulling from that model. It's a more European model.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it earlier today. I hadn't really thought about it. There aren't that many American companies now that are small, kind of doing owner-led design. Let's say. Yeah. I mean, there's some cool companies out there. Maybe not going to the consumer. I think a lot of them you won't see. Because they're B2B related companies where they can grow a little quicker. Yeah. I just can't, after being in this world for a while, I can't imagine doing it a different way. We might grow a hair slower, and there might be some changes, but I don't want to run from a financial perspective. We will make money, it will be good. But it should be like, oh, what's that great design, or who designed that, or when did that come out, and all those kinds of things. I think that will lead to great success. Yeah, I mean, if we had raised, let's just say we had raised $20 million to run the company, and that pressure would be overwhelming, and I don't think you have the same quality of product that we're putting out. I
think of even some of the history here of Cranbrook's legacy, the chairs that we're sitting in right now. Companies like Knoll and Herman Miller in the early days, partly because of their scale. They had Knoll had Florence Knoll, who was calling the shots. She was basically owner and creative director there. And at Herman Miller, they had George Nelson, and it seemed like they were really operating under a similar kind of model that we're talking about of a smaller company, family owned, driven by people who have a real design vision, and it's not designed by committee. I think the hard part, even for both of those companies now, as a company grows and needs to serve a larger audience, that's much harder to do, like that kind of edgy, risky design. And like these designs in their day were radical.
You know, I think about those designs from that time, and would I have the guts as CEO of Design Within Reach to greenlight like this chair? I hope to think yes, but it was so radical and so cool and so different. I'd like to think yes. I honestly don't know. I think design by committee is destined for failure. You know, you always, the story about, you know, a committee designs a horse and it's a camel or whatever the story is. I can't imagine having 20 opinions on the Vignelli cube. Oh, make it wider, you know, or something. I don't know what they would say, but they would change it. I think these companies today, the large companies that are not like family owned, that are publicly traded, that are pressured every single day to do more business than the prior day a year earlier, and are graded on that, paid by it, and hired or fired by it, have to fight for great design. And they have the scale to bring in some phenomenal people. If you look at Ben Watson, Noah Schwartz, et cetera, at Herman Miller, those are players, yeah. And they know what they're doing. I think it can easily get lost, but I think if it gets lost, they will fail, and you'll see it. If you don't have great product, the competition will eat you.
So looking into the future, how do you imagine growing the Heller story?
Well, I was, you know, awake from 2 to 4 last night thinking about it. My job is to tell the world about the designers that we worked with. Massimo and Leila Vignelli, Mario Bellini, Frank Gehry, Cleaner Atlason, et cetera, right? And if I tell their stories properly and explain the origin of why they created these items and make them really, really well, then they have a chance of standing the test of time and being used and sold to the masses, right? Our design is super high level, and our price point is relatively entry level. You know, 4 dining chairs for $1,100 isn't cheap, but it's not really expensive. You know, so it's accessible. You know, we found a young woman at a trade show a year and a half ago in New York named Anna Dawson. She was in the graduate program at RISD, and she had her senior project up on the wall. And we walked by it, busy as can be, had just bought the company 3 days before. And I said to my business partner, Andrew McPhee, I'm like, that's Heller. And we went back, we introduced ourselves to her, gave her a business card. I said, listen, we're so busy, we're running full speed, we just bought the company, call me in 2 weeks. She called me, and 1 year from meeting her, we launched her product, the Swell Coat Rack. And the first customer to buy it and have an exclusive was the Museum of Modern Art stores. So that's my job with Heller, right? It's to let the world know who Anna Dawson is. It's to remember the Vignellis, and it's to propel Cleaner Atlason into the next level of stardom that he's going to have. We're launching a chair in May by a small design firm out of Brooklyn called Jumbo Studios. It's going to be called the Fortune Chair, and I think it's good. Like, I think it's really good. But who was laughing over there? I always think so.
It's in the slideshow.
Oh, okay. If you see it, Bonnie, you can give me the high sign. But I love the chair. So, and I think if we keep telling that story and keep showing up at the right places and keep winning awards and being very friendly to everybody all the time, we have a chance of getting Heller to be a real decent-sized company. Europe will come. I'm not into shipping, you know, empty boxes to Europe. You know, with the furniture inside, there's a lot of air. So we'll find a partner in Europe, and we'll replicate all the molds in Europe and produce there when the time comes. I'm really holding back to get a full collection. Vitra, if you're listening, I want to do it with you. But we'll see what happens.
How do you frame the sustainability story of Heller?
So there's 2 parts of sustainability. One is longevity. And if you have great design that people keep forever and trade and sell, and it's worth more on eBay 20 years after, oh, that's the jumbo chair, guys. That's the jumbo chair. That's fine. Bonnie just waved to me. So if like Hellerware, our plates and dishes, Like, people freak out on eBay, on Etsy to buy that stuff used, and they're paying more than new, which I love. That's part one. Part two is you have to do the right thing. So all of our furniture is completely recyclable. So not only will it last forever and tradable and it'll be on first dibs at some point, but it's completely recyclable. And that's huge. All of our new furniture are made using recycled products in combination with recyclable products. So the entire item is recyclable. We're working on technology to make all of the products biodegradable within 5 years of being in a landfill, if they get to a landfill. And that solves the microplastic issue, and it solves the environmental issue. So we're 19 months in, we're making strides. The rocking chair from Vignelli, we launched it with the first ever NFT proof of authenticity and recyclability. I got a ton of press. Not one customer signed up for it. But it was a good idea, but no one really cared. So my point is, we're trying everything. And we're doing a good job, I think, at the moment. We can do better.
Yeah, one big idea in recycling is the need to separate materials. And that's a big problem with a lot of furniture design, right? Because the chairs that you're all sitting in right now are made up of upholstered parts, plastic parts, metal parts, and to recycle those, you have to be able to separate all of them, and it's a big design job. But your products are really easy that way.
Yeah, it's all one material, and if you send them back to us, we'll recycle them for you into new product. And it's on the website and all that. So, yeah, it's pretty easy to recycle.
So how do people buy Heller products?
Well, that you can go to heller.com. No. Of course, through our website, hellerfurniture.com. But we've kind of rejoined with Design Within Reach in an amazing way. And they're championing the brand. We had been thrown out before I bought the company. And so I had to kind of I got us back in, but it wasn't a top-down entry. We worked with the buyer. It was hard to get an appointment. We had to go multiple times. I carried the furniture over my shoulder through the parking lot in Stanford to the office. I run hot. I sweat through the whole thing, and they said, "We'll work with you. We'll test it." The second they turned it on online, which was exciting, it started to sell. And the Vignelli bench, that's the beautiful Gary collection, but the Vignelli bench, they're like, "Oh, we can't put that in the stores. We've never sold it." I'm like, "That's the best collection." And so they said, "If it sells online, we'll put it in the stores." And it was the best collection. It's sold online, and now it's in the stores. The jumbo chair will go to All Store in May, which is they've never done before. So they're the big push out there. They're still the big gorilla. But we're working with Lumens and Too Modern. I visited a tiny Italian design store in here today, and I think he's going to carry the goods. We have stores in Santa Fe, Miami. We're out there knocking on doors. And then I have also been traveling every week, calling on design firms around the country, whether it's Gensler or HOK or Perkins & Will, the great design firms that are out there, telling the Heller story and bringing it back into their world for corporate and hospitality.
So do you ever foresee any brick and mortar retail for Heller?
No. No. Other people's brick and mortar. It's like having a best friend with a boat. I am not doing that again. I had a good run, 10 years. I left on top. Let's go. It's just grueling.
So if people want to kick the tires, so to speak, on Heller products, they're going to have to find them in Design Within Reach or these other
Design Within Reach or a local retailer. Yeah. It's pretty easy. They have stores everywhere in most urban markets. So I think now they have one in Grand Rapids would be the closest. But they make it easy. I didn't realize when I was CEO fully that we were the only game around with more than 10 stores. So if you really kind of have to be in there on the modern consumer side. And luckily we are, and they're treating us well.
So before we open up to Q&A, I have a, I don't know, maybe it's a silly question, but what's more important, business or design?
What's more important? So ask Steve Jobs if he was alive, you know? And he knew that if design was great, you had a business. So they're the same, but design is more important. And I have friends that are in business that sell crappy product and make a ton of money and don't care. So to them, business is more important. But it's fine. They support their families. They live nicely. But I do believe if you start off with excellent design, the business will follow.
Great. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, joining us in the studio today. Thank you for visiting us here.
I loved every minute.
Yeah. We right before this, we had a tour through the museum vault, which if you haven't done it yet, I highly encourage you to do it. How did you like that?
No, it's design porn. I mean, it's as good as it gets. You know, you're there with the original Eames Lachaise and, you know, the prototype of the organic chair, the only chair that Eames and Saarinen did together. I mean, not the only one, but the popular one. You know, it was amazing. I loved it. But I loved working with the kids more. That was the best part of the day.
Great.
And then we have questions.
Yeah, why don't we open it up to questions from the audience? And we do want to capture this on video, so hoping that we can have some support for passing the mic around. So any questions? I think Becca's in the back there, so she can help with the mic.
Thank you. I had a question regarding Heller, and because I look at the pieces and they're very beautiful, and as a designer and a maker, the first thing I think of is the manufacturing process, and there's so many molds. Can you talk a little bit more about the tooling behind it?
Yeah, the tooling is kind of awesome, right? Because you make this model, and then the mold's like 10 times bigger. Massive cranes have to move the molds. There's two different types of, I'll go quickly, two different types of production. One is injected, one is rotational. The injected molds have to be crazy strong because they're getting super high pressure material pumped into them, and it can't leak anywhere. There can't be any lines, it's gotta be perfect. The rotational molds are awesome to watch because they roll with dust inside of our material that melts as the piece molds, and then it lines the perimeter of the mold as it moves, and you weigh it perfectly so the thickness is right. And when it comes out, it's just the exterior of the mold, and so it moves. Yeah. So I'll take this way, but it goes like this, simultaneously, and you should see the size of the cranes that have to move the molds. It's massive, and they're expensive, right? They're expensive, and they're not fragile. I mean, they last basically forever, but they need maintenance and all that. It's a whole other world that I didn't know about. I thought it was way easier.
Got a question over here.
The man with a hat.
How you doing? I'm curious, if you were to work with other designers, would you be more wanting to work with a 100% designer or a designer that also fabricates?
I have no preference. Okay, I like an industrial designer, not an interior designer. Right? There's a big difference. I've had to fire, unfortunately, some of my good friends that are world famous interior designers. When they design a room with a piece. An industrial designer can design a piece and then the room fills around it, and it can go in any room. So it's good that if they know how to make the piece. There's a designer in New York that did these beautiful wood side tables for us, and I'm forgetting his name. I'll think of it later. But he tools the wood. Right? And so for the first meeting to do one piece, he brought 50 models, miniatures that he tooled himself. And if he couldn't have done that, if he wasn't a craftsman, we wouldn't have gotten to what we did. And the pieces are amazing. Pat Kim. And he's a very good designer out of Brooklyn. And yeah, so for me, it's about the quality of the design first. And I'm going to make it, right? So I don't need someone that knows how to make it necessarily. And also, I do find that most people that make product on a larger scale have a very hard time being a designer and running the business of production. Niels Benson is a great example. He's one of my favorite designers out of Vancouver. And he wasted 10 years with that factory torturing himself before he outsourced it all to Italy and made it perfect.
I'm gonna sneak in one more question here, the kind of classic question of what kind of advice would you give to young designers who are starting off in their career?
I mean, I talked to a lot of them today, and I've been speaking to a lot of schools lately and a lot of young people. I mean, a couple things. One, say yes. The biggest thing I say yes. You know, take the jobs that are offered. If you want to work in a firm and the job you want isn't available, you know, they used to say work in the mailroom. There's no more mail, I guess. But, you know, empty the trash. You know, get in the firm. Make yourself indispensable. Do anything to get in. Just say yes. Say yes to the bad jobs. That's what I did my whole life. I started off in the shoe business. I wasn't allowed to sell shoes. So I found the worn damages in the back room and sold those. You know, because it was the worst job nobody wanted. I always tell people, you know, stop talking. Great example, me tonight, you know. But stop talking and ask questions. All right, whoever asks the most questions wins. And if you're in an environment, you ask a lot of questions, and you made yourself indispensable, you're going to find your way.
I guess I win tonight.
No question.
Thank you. Please, 2 questions, because I'd like to win as well. Can your collection be side by side with traditional furnishings? And second question, how is your primary residence furnished?
On the first question, can they be used indoors or outdoors, right? Is that basically the question?
With traditional design.
Oh, yeah. I love that. And that's where you go to the Europeans. And that's how they live. They live in a crumbled, beautiful, patinaed building. And they use an oriental rug mixed with their family's antiques from wherever, with an Eames, Lounge, John Edelman, with a and they understand eclecticism. And people live that way. You know, some people live in all modern. Usually it doesn't even come off as all modern when they live all modern. It comes off as something forced because it's not comfortable. So we always, that's why at Design Within Reach, we never showed the Knoll section or the Miller section. We always mixed everything because that's how we think people live. And my wife is our interior designer of our house. We spent 26 years, you know, searching flea markets and finding out what we love. And so our house is flea market finds from Paris flea market, New York flea market, anywhere. And the furniture mostly is products we worked on at Design Within Reach, you know, classics. I mean, modern classics, you know, Norm Architects, my favorite sofa factory out of Lake Como, where I just love those people. Our dining table is kind of special. We cut some trees down when we did our house. And so we waited 2 years and kiln dried the wood and did the whole deal and turned it into our dining table. So that's something that we hadn't done before. And the artwork is either by my wife or old masters we got from my parents. So it's modern. It's everything we love, but I would say it's eclectic, warm, modern.
I just have 2 quick questions. Are you related to Sam Edelman?
Yeah, that's my eldest brother. That's the guy that gave me the shoe job.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Second question. You alluded to it earlier, but how do you deal with copycats? In other words, I somehow looking at some of the stuff, it reminds me of a store named Conrad's.
Yeah. Well, Conrad's was authentic.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, how do you deal with people copying your concepts?
Yeah, first you yell at them.
Yeah.
You write a cease and desist.
You mentioned a lot of lawyers earlier, too.
You write a cease and desist. You get an attorney to write the cease and desist. And if you have the proper standings, you can probably get them to not call it the same name. You can do better on certain items, but I mean, let's just talk about the Saarinen dining table. The greatest table ever designed. Restoration Hardware has their version. Everybody's got, it's everywhere. They don't own the rights. They do not own the rights to their own best-selling table, right? They evaporated. They can call it a Saarinen-inspired table. Some of them, they put, there's very little protection. So then who makes it the best? Who gives the best warranty? Who's the most trustworthy company? There's a million other questions, but it's hard. It's really hard. And if people copy consistently, they will kill the future of design. Because for every great product you make, you're going to fail with 3. And you have to be able to afford the failures to create the next great products. And when they copy your only good one, it makes it tough. So you do have to do your best. And I must say, the cease and desist goes really far. With Be Original Americas, I've gone to the port and trained the U.S. Customs Service on how to detect copies. That's illegal. The Customs Service changed how they bonus the people so they figured what would it be the value if they had drugs inside them and there were copies and things like that to make it more interesting to stop the containers. But we work with them a lot to stop them at the port.
I don't know if we did we describe Be Original Americas? It's an advocacy group for authenticity in design.
Right. It's a group of design firms and manufacturers that fight for authenticity in design. And we do it mostly through education. And the big transition happened when Gensler joined, the greatest design firm in the world, HOK, Perkins & Will, Rote Studios. And they said, we won't specify knockoffs. Right? Design firms were specifying a product and then okaying if the knockoff came in. So if you checked into a W hotel and you saw all the gorgeous bar stools, they could have been copies. So the more we get people to look to see if they're copies, not trust brands that use copies, and get design firms to specify authentic product, the more we can rid out the copies. Because copies are only going to come in if there's a huge market for them. But there was an article in Business of Home today where they're like, we call them dupes. Are dupes okay? There's good people on both sides. Who knows? But I would say, no. Dupes are the same as knockoffs, and it's not allowed.
John, what's the worst retailer for knockoffs?
I'll say it right out here. Wayfair. Wayfair operates losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year on free shipping and knocking people off. They don't care about product at all. They're an amalgamator, and I got yelled at by the founder. Took me aside and literally yelled at me over my stance on this. But they're the number one offender, no question.
Trying to get you in trouble.
I don't care. I don't get in trouble anymore unless I'm at home. It's fun now.
I don't know if I need the microphone, but I'll take it.
You have a good voice.
Hi. You're Heller, and you are telling me you are running your company with 7 employees? Am I hearing that correctly? 7? How do you do it? I'm serious. I can't imagine how you can do it with 7 employees. It's amazing.
We're a startup. I bought a tiny company. I can't tell you how small it was. Alan ran it from his deathbed, literally. Lost all of his customers, lost the rights to the products. We resuscitated a dead thing. And we don't have a budget for more. And if I had more, I wouldn't immediately sell more. And I don't want to raise outside money to a real extent. So we're doing it. I outsource PR. I outsource the CFO. And, I hire these amazing young people that can do anything, that have no fear. I outsource sales to the multi-line salespeople out in the marketplace. And I leverage every single friendship I have in the industry to get an appointment to go see the best firms in the world, hopefully get them specified. But we are 7 people. My wife is here. We were in my house until a year ago, having meetings in my little office. 6 people come to my house every day to work. And we got the Volkswagen bus, and you guys can look up the bus, and had the whole company in there driving through New York. And it's the way it's supposed to be, to grow organically. Listen, we could go out and raise venture capital and have 100 people and grow quickly. I'm a watch collector. And I waited 3 years to get the watch from the Rolex dealer. A lot of guys or people will buy it in the secondary market and pay double the price. That's not the fun way to do it, right? Collectors collect and they take their time. Growing this company is going to be a little, listen, we tripled it year over year, so it's pretty fast. But it's not going to be overnight.
Kudos to you. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Please continue. So my question is, do you ever get stuck creatively? And if so, where do you turn for inspiration or to sort of reinvigorate that?
No. I've never been stuck
amazing.
creatively. My brain is exploding. I have other interests, which I don't care about at the moment. I'm laser focused on one thing, which is Heller. I love collecting all different kinds of things, from 1970s portable radios to 1950s portable TVs to whatever. I'm doing none of that. That happens at about the 4-year mark with the business where I need outside interest. But since I'm not a designer, I don't have to worry about that part. And I have 15 years of concepts to execute in this business. So I've not gotten, thank God, maybe I will tomorrow, but I haven't had a creative block yet.
So I do have a question, but I wanted to start with saying thank you for making beautiful things. As I was sitting here, because I would hear I think it was the Cranbrook founder that said, a life without beauty is only a life half lived. And that's what stuck with me. And so thank you.
Thank you.
What I heard you, and you're passionate about design, clearly. But as you talked about sleeping and not sleeping throughout the night. And I have a lot of empathy for that. And I'm curious, because we all need sleep. But is there any advice that you can give about what you do to let go of the distraction, let go of the noise? How do you get a good night's sleep?
Well, they legalized weed in Michigan, I think. I don't know. You have to just segment portions of your life, right? Like, I have the greatest life in the world, and you have to always remember what you have and meditate on that, and that cures things. I can't sleep because I care about what I'm doing, and I could probably figure it out. But, the day is so busy. When do you get some clarity of thought? And I'm fine. I say every once in a while I don't sleep because I'm worried about stuff, but in general, it's okay. Thank you, though.
Did we cover it? Let's do one more question. I'm sorry.
Kind of going back to the subject that we were here for today, and a little background. I spent 15 years in commercial furniture, half at Silkcase, half at a startup, so I love your discussion. I'm just curious, you talked about design being slightly more important than business when you're making a decision. What tools or what process do you use to determine the commercial viability of a given design? Because a lot of design is beautiful, but it's not going to go anywhere in the marketplace.
Yeah, there's price point. There's void in the marketplace, which is huge. Like, does the world need another, bentwood dining chair? I'm not sure. You always start off with a void and a purpose, design for a purpose, and work backwards from there. And I know that, in my business, it's hard to predict. But at Design Within Reach, we know that, bar stool category at this height with this back can do X if it's right. You have some history to judge from before you spend the money on all the product development. Right now, with Heller, I'm like, we don't have anything. Let's create some great stuff and build a collection. So I don't have to worry about it as much. But I know we need a chaise, right? There's no chaise. So at some point, we'll get the stupid chaise done. But I have confidence that I really do. I've always had confidence. I don't necessarily agree with what you said. Like, if it's a great design, inherently it will sell, right? Like, because if it doesn't, it probably was a flaw. And that could have been price. Like, so the Fortune chair, I pointed out before, that one we're launching in May, I saw that on Instagram just after COVID. And it was like a weird green color in spun aluminum, a one-off for $45,000. Now, that's great design that's not going to sell, but it was great design that could. So that's when I called them. I literally just DM'd them on Instagram, which I don't really do. And they responded, and we started this connection. And we'll launch that chair for $1,100 and bring it to people that can enjoy it in the same way, the same integrity of design. But it was a great design first. Is that a fair response? Okay.
Should we cut these nice people loose?
They want to ask questions. I like it, but I'm happy to let them go.
Okay, well, I want to thank you again for joining us, and please come back again soon.
I think I do with great pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking your evening.